please again. God, I'm begging, please again. I need you. Oh, I need you. Walking down the desert road, water for my thirsty soul. I need you. Oh, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of the symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. Dead man walking, slave to sin, wanna know about being born again. I need you. Oh, I need you. So take me to the riverside, take me under, baptize. I need you. Oh, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. On my skin. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. Your forgiveness, it's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water. sing of your love forever. I could sing of your love forever. I could sing of your love forever. I could sing of your love forever. Oh, I feel like dancing. It's foolishness, I know. When the world has seen the light, we will dance with joy like we're dancing now. I could sing of your love forever. 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 Peace, bring it all to peace. The storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name, still, call the sea to still, the rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Breathe, call these bones to live. Call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus, you make the mountains tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, 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 you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus.
Father in heaven,
I pray for those who are living in any sort of darkness right now, that you would be able to bring light to right where they're at, that you would let them know that you see them right where they're at, and dispel the darkness. They might know how much you truly love them. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. Good. A couple of things this morning. One is that the DTE has called and said that the area is going to probably experience some power outage at 10:30 and last for an hour. Obviously, they didn't see if this was an opportune time for churches. But yes, so we could be, if I'm talking and all of a sudden my lips are moving, but no sound is coming out, I'm just going to have to speak a little louder, and then I'll come up with my acoustic guitar and Chris and yell at you guys musically as best as possible for the communion. But we'll continue. We'll just raise the curtains back there that Ginny kindly made so we can open the windows and let the light in, so that'll be nice. Secondly, I forgot my Bible. So I'm just going to read the scriptures off the screen to do the whole message today. It should be fine. I don't usually use any notes anyway. Oh, it's there. Oh, good. I didn't know where somebody put it, so I'm like, I don't have a Bible. So, yeah. Who needs a Bible anyway, right? Just church. All right, so we are in Romans chapter 3. And if you guys remember what was taught, and then continuing on what Dan taught, the whole thing about Romans, he's laying out the most clear explanation to the gospel and all its facets and what it means in the book of Romans to the Romans, whom he has not visited. He doesn't know them. He's just heard about them and their faithfulness, right? And he starts out and he talks about, oh, by the way, the gospel means good news. Though it is interesting when you read this, some people would say, well, that doesn't sound like very good news. Yes, because there's a whole lot about the gospel that it talks about judgment. And the judgment doesn't sound great. And it's going to sound not great because like we're all to be judged and we are all guilty. And so it's like, this is good news. Well, the good news is that we're delivered from our condition by the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, so that the price is paid, that God can still be just, and we can receive eternal rewards that we don't deserve. All right? So he's kind of explaining all this, and there are parts of it that just, he says, my gospel, the gospel that he shares, it's the gospel of Jesus Christ. Sometimes doesn't sound all that great, but you got to understand it's a large discussion here. It's going to go on for weeks for us, right? And so he starts out and he talks about the condition of mankind, that in general, not talking about Jews, but generally mankind has not sought God. They have sought gods that would give them what they want, that would do what they want, sometimes constructing them in their mind, sometimes actually following falling angels from heaven and setting themselves up as deities that would actually engage with the people, and they would, appease them. And so what happens is because humanity decides they're going to build their own, worship any other than the Creator, and then they build representations of their God and end up worshiping statues of metal and stone and gold. God says the natural form, and he gives them over to their natural tendencies. What's going to happen is they're going to continue going deeper and deeper into sin that carries itself out in sexual activities that are abominable to him, and then continuing on with greed and malice and hatred and all of these things. Now, if you read this letter like it's written to you, even if you're not a Christian, it's like, well, I haven't murdered anybody and I'm not interested in shedding blood. So everyone can't be, because I know I'm not. But the reality is mankind as a whole continues to move towards violence, theft, greed, power,
all of those, and pleasure to the nth degree, to whatever's best for me. And so we become a very egocentric world, is that we're more concerned about what's best for me than what's best for everybody else and our Creator. And so he lets mankind continue to pursue those things. But then he does want to leave more illumination. He's illumination, not elimination. Illuminate. He wants to explain to people. And so he says, this is the world the way it is. He raised up the Jewish nation, gave them the law so they would have some understanding about righteousness and what it is. But then he says to the Jews, you think you're better, but you're not, because you can tell the world how screwed up they are, but you do the same things. Even though you know better, you do the same things. They also go into bloodshed, into power, into greed. Everything else that the Gentiles do, they do, except for they should know better, but they do them anyway. Because they can't help themselves. It's in our DNA to continue to worry about what's best for me. And when you give me what's best, what you think is best for you, you only want more. It never satisfies. There's just something inside humans that when you get what you think you need to make life complete, you need more. You never sit there and say, I finally got all the money I need. Finally got all the rest I need, all the safety, all the comfort. It's not going to happen. You always want more. And so the desire to get those things will cause you to justify reasons why to do something that you normally wouldn't do. And it isn't like people with power. People can go into places of power with really good intentions, and then what does it do to them when they have that power? It corrupts them. You know, they don't have enough of it, and they're trying to maintain it. So, like, you look through the Bible and the history of the Bible, Saul gets to be king. He's chosen to be king, and then when it's, like, threatened to take it away, he's trying to hurt the most loyal fan he has in David. He tries to kill him. You know, but you start doing really irrational things when you start getting what you want. God says, if that's what you want, go ahead. So he does that with the Gentiles. And they're not without excuse, because the creation itself has God's fingerprints all over it, that he exists and you should be seeking the Creator. The Jews have the written word, and they should know better. And they would follow the law. Last week, Dan would talk about circumcision, that circumcision was an external sign. It was something that was supposed to be happening inside, but didn't. So they would follow all the external rules, and Christians are guilty of this all the time. They will come to church, they can lambaste people who are evil and everything else and have no compassion inside. And Jesus called out the Pharisees for it. Christians this day and age are really good at being Pharisees. And so the same thing. They know the truth. They can't turn the switches inside to make them want to do them. So they only do the external things thinking that that's enough, but it's not. He says, nope, you're just as condemned. So then you get to chapter 3. Chapter 3, he's asking all these, so he asks questions as if he's going to be asked these questions. You may ask this, and then he goes through to ask them. Actually, what happens when I do messages, a lot of times I'm thinking, I know they're going to be thinking this. So I'm going to say, you may think this, but this is what's actually going on. You see what I'm saying? So I'm like answering your questions by supposing what is a logical question or beef you would have with what I'm teaching. And Paul is doing the same thing. And he's got these questions in here to deal with them one at a time. So starting in chapter 3, verse 1, he says, what advantage then is there in being a Jew? Or what value is there in circumcision? So if like, why bother giving the law to the Jews if what advantage is there if we're all condemned anyway, right? And he says, much in every way. So there is advantage. First of all, the Jews have been entrusted with the very words of God. Okay? We're going to come back to that later. What if some were unfaithful? Will their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? Not at all. Let God be true and every human as a liar. So he says, what if some were unfaithful? So the Jews received the word of God. And if you come to a Wednesday night Bible study, we're in the book of Judges, and there's this cyclical passage, cyclical problem that happens all the way through the book. They follow God when they get to the land. They settle in the land. They get complacent. They worship the gods of the peoples that inhabited the land before them and amongst them. And they reject God, or they try and muddy the waters, worship God and these other gods. And so God says, fine, have it your way, because the law said, if you deny me, then the other nations and the people you live with will attack you and win, because I'm not going to defend you because you don't want me. So why should I do this, right? So that was part of the law, is that if they don't follow it, they're going to suffer. So what happens is enemies come in, they attack them, they rape them, they pillage them, they steal their stuff, they make them live in poverty, and they're in hiding, and then they cry out, oh God, help us. And then God comes in, sends somebody in there, and through that person he helps them. And as soon as it's calm again and everything's fine, then they kind of reject God again because they can get complacent, and it goes through the whole cycle again. Then the enemies come in, they attack them, and they go, oh God, help us. And he says, why should I help you? You're breaking the covenant. Now when you look at this question right here, in verse 3, it says, what if some were unfaithful? Will their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? So what he's saying is all the Jews were God's favored, chosen people, right? And that when they're unfaithful, God lets all of these nations come in and attack them. Does that mean God is unfaithful? Because he said he would keep them, his children, his people. They would be like the sand of the seashore and the stars. And Paul says, absolutely not. Now think about this, is that the law of God wasn't just about blessing. It was also blessing and curses. And so when they were brought into the land, there were two mountains, Mount Abel and Mount Gerizim. And on Mount Gerizim, to the south, they would say all of these blessings. Blessed are those who follow the law. They would say, so be it. And cursed are those who deny the law. And they'd say, so be it. And blessed are those who love the Lord. And blessed are those who, cursed are those who worship other gods. And it goes back and forth. All these curses and blessings on these two mountains. And they're both part of the law. So God is faithful to both. He is still faithful. Just because we are unfaithful, he is faithful to carry out the results of our unfaithfulness, still making him faithful. All right? So then he says this. So he says, like, verse 4, not at all. Let God be true and every human being a liar, as it is written. So now it's going to list the Old Testament passage here. So that you may be proved right when you speak and prevail when you're judged. So the reason, whenever his word is spoken and they disobey it, then he follows through with his word to allow the heat to come down on them and they be persecuted or destroyed or attacked or whatever. He said this is going to happen so that God may be proven right when he speaks and prevail when he judges. All right? So it's going to continually prove that God is true. And the law actually is a teacher. It's going to talk about this. It's going to teach. But one of the things it's going to teach is that we are no good on our own. That we can't fulfill law, any righteousness. We can do a righteous act. This is where it kind of gets confusing and used to be when I was a younger Christian. Yes, you can do something good. But can you do it when it's the right thing to do, even though it hurts you? And you would go, if you're honest, depends. How much is it going to hurt? Right? So, your neighbor needs a heart transplant. Your heart matches. Will you give your heart to your neighbor? Us is a little high. Like I say bye, you say hello. Like the old Beatles song. Hello, hello. I say goodbye, you say hello, backwards. Like, so what happens is it depends. Like, what if, now see the thing is, if your kid needs a surgery for cancer or something else, and it will succeed, but you have to come up with a couple $100,000 in order to do it, would you sell your house to do it? Yes. Will you do it for your neighbor? But the scripture says, love your neighbor as yourself. Right? So our natural condition is, yes, we can do good things, but the problem is we're limited in what we can do based upon I come first, you come second, or third, or fourth, or fifth down the line. And even if we do good, we can't sort out the motives of why we do them. Like a lot of times what we do is we do good and we don't even know we're really doing it because it makes us feel good that we did something good. Not necessarily to publicly pat us on the back. You could do it secret. You just do it because it makes you feel good. And so the thing is that it is so hard to sort out the motives of why we do things. And God says, down to our core, our motives are corrupt. That's what's wrong with humanity, right? So here they have these laws, and God is going to be proven right. And right about what? Our unrighteousness and our need for him. All right? So then it continues, verse 5. But if our unrighteousness brings out God's righteousness more clearly, what shall we say? That God is unjust in bringing his wrath on us? I'm using a human argument. Certainly not. If that were so, how could God judge the world? So here's the thing. So if he writes the law, we break the law as Jews, if we were Jews, we prove that he is right, that's a good thing, right? So why does he get upset at us if we're just proving he's right? That would be like going to your wife and you do things that are wrong only to prove that she's right. And she would love you even more for that, right? Not in my household. I mean, if I just she says we should do this and I do the opposite and screw everything up for us financially or whatever, and then say, you were right, like we proved you were right, thank me now. It makes no sense, right? So it doesn't make sense. But in a way, it's like, if this is good, then why don't we just keep doing this kind of stuff, right? And that's we're going to get into that when we get into a later chapter. But he said, if God's right, if our unrighteousness brings about God's righteousness more clearly, what shall we say? Is that God is unjust, bringing his wrath on us? I'm using a human argument. Like logically, it seems like, okay, this is assignment logical. Why does he condemn us? Certainly not. If it were so, how could God judge the world? God wouldn't be righteous if he did that. He wouldn't be able to honestly judge the world if he was only doing it to make himself look good. He doesn't set his law up to condemn you to make himself look better. Then he would be corrupt too. Then he would not be righteous himself enough to be the judge of the world, right? Then we go into verse 7. Someone might argue, if my falsehood enhances God's truthfulness and so increases his glory, why am I still condemned as a sinner? It's the same argument he's continuing. If what I say is, if the things I do and say make him enhance God's truthfulness, why am I still condemned? Because he didn't do these things. He's not doing these things to condemn you. He's trying to display the truth. And yes, he can take our faults and our lies and our wickedness to prove he is right. But that's not his desire. That's not his desire. He's not doing that so that he can prove he's right. He's right whether we exist or not. All right? Then it continues, verse 8. Why not say, as some slanderously claim, that we say, let us do evil that good may result? Their condemnations are just. All right? So if we continue to do these things so God looks good, why not we just continue doing these? And actually, there's I don't know how familiar you guys are with like church history, but you got Calvinists and Arminians, and they have this argument all the time whether once you come into the grace of God and God makes you a new creation, are you safe forever? Or can you tell God, forget that, I'm out of here, and then you are going to be judged and condemned to hell? And this argument as a Calvinist, once you are actually become a Christian and a new creation, you can't be changed because God already changed you from the inside out. The Arminians say, you can say I want out and just walk away or become so evil that God won't. And the people that are Calvinists would say, well, then you didn't really know the love of God to begin with, did you? Because if you really knew the love of God, you would never say, I want out of this great deal. And so the argument has gone on for hundreds of years. And the reason the argument goes on for hundreds of years is because you can find scriptures to back up this position and this position. And we're going to actually get into that when we get into Romans even further. And the problem is when we try and do this kind of stuff, we're trying to logically work out stuff in our heads that we can't. We're limited understanding the way God works things, okay? But the idea here is what happens with the contemporary argument is those who believe I can't lose my position with God are criticized who believe that you can, because then you can say you wouldn't just go out and sin. There's no motive for you to be righteous or be good or anything because you're safe. You slid into home and now you're fine. You said, Jesus, forgive me. I'm a sinner. Come into my heart. I'm a Christian now. Woohoo. Let's go get drunk and party. These people are like, something wrong with that, and they're right? But these people would say, if the person goes and says, I get drunk and party, they like, you don't really know what they've been forgiven for, because you don't want to do that. It's like when somebody's finally broken for their sin, the last thing they want to do is do that again when they've been forgiven, that they did when they don't deserve forgiveness. When you're finally forgiven, it's not like, man, I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to screw up again. I screwed up bad enough already. And so they're like, so there's truth on both sides. But the argument is carried out here all the way back when Paul is sitting here talking. The same things we're arguing about now, he was talking about back then. All right? So as we kind of go through this, now I want to back up. And it says, what advantage is there then in being a Jew? And he says, much in every way. First of all, the Jews have been entrusted with the very words of God. Now this... So this is the thing is, they knew God himself. They knew God to be real, and they knew the difference between what was righteousness and what wasn't. The rest of the world knew there was such a thing as righteousness and what was right, but they couldn't for sure know what the difference was between what was right and what was wrong, what was true and what was false. They had to guess and rely on opinion. So they're worshiping gods, hoping that their gods are more powerful than the gods of Israel, the God of Israel and the gods of other nations. But they don't know that. That's just the God of their land, right? And they lay down all these rules, whether it's cannibalism or theft, or the landowners are the ones who... See, it's interesting when you look through history and they try and find moral codes and laws throughout history, and you find them, but they're inconsistently applied, except the Old Testament scripture law. Because the law in the Old Testament's applied equally to everybody in Israel. But in other countries, it's not equally applied. You had to be a landowner. If you weren't a landowner, then you died if you stole something. But if you were a landowner, you didn't die. So you get in the Hammurabi Code. Those are laws to protect landowners, not people, just landowners. And those codes are held up as like, these are moral codes, these are laws, you didn't need the Bible. Every culture had they had their moral codes, but it was to protect the haves and the have-nots. The whole idea that every human being is equally valuable now is taken for granted. But it is not true throughout most of history. Most human history, the haves were valuable, the haves not were property or garbage. Children weren't very valuable unless they were your own. It is as people started, in Israel, children were valuable. Teach your children to love the Lord your God. Teach your children all these statutes. Teach them your history. It's important for you to teach your children. Right? Not just your children, the children of all Israel. They had schools where they were taught